So today we are going to talk about how to download and install Virtualmin on your virtual private server. If you remember, we in the previous video talked about how to install WordPress on a virtual private server, which we previously had nothing installed on that, and hence was a brand new machine. But today we are going to install a control panel, which is effectively going to be used to manage the VPS itself. And it is also going to host the WordPress website or any other website, either PHP, using PHP, any framework in the future. Now, control panels are necessary because just installing WordPress or simply installing LAMP stack is not a very efficient way of managing a server. So you cannot recall, you cannot execute, you cannot know all the Linux commands that are really required to manage various functions in the online world through your command line. And even best of the network administrators would be hesitant to do it, and they'd be really handy, and they'd be really used to a few of the commands to be run on daily basis. So here, what we are going to do is we are going to install Virtualmin, which is a very popular control panel, and it's used worldwide and is kind of an accepted standard to manage Linux machines which are hosted on cloud. For that purpose, we are going to use DigitalOcean this time. And reason for using DigitalOcean is to show you that, because previously I was using Vultr.com, and today I'm using DigitalOcean, and just to show you the setup, it takes about the same amount of time and same amount of effort to set up a server in the DigitalOcean as well. So this video is going to cover two different aspects. Number one, how to create a virtual private server on DigitalOcean. Number two, then how to install a control panel. Eventually, installing WordPress or configuring your PHP website is going to be the next step, which we are going to talk about in the next video. So we're going to start. And before that, I have virtualmin.com/download.html opened in front of me. And you can see that I have a very simple command to run to install my control panel. But before I do that, I'm going to go to my DigitalOcean control panel. I'm going to create a droplet. It's going to be, let's take it as a CentOS machine. So I'm going to do it on CentOS 7. It's going to be a basic one, shared CPU, dedicated CPUs you can see here. And in the previous videos, I explained what is the difference between the shared CPU and dedicated CPU for people who are joining fresh. So shared CPU means that it's one big server, and out of that big server we have shared resources. However, for the dedicated CPU means that we are purchasing a dedicated CPU from a dedicated hardware. So for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to keep this as a 2 GB, one CPU, 50 gigs of SSD storage with 2 terabytes of transfer. And we are going to use those specs on 7.6 CentOS. And we're going to choose San Francisco as the location, or maybe like New York. So we're going to go with New York. No VPC networks, no version 6 enabled, and no monitoring. So it's going to be like authentication is going to be based on the password, not SSH keys. SSH key is not really difficult, but it's kind of advanced for somebody who is just jumping into the world of server administration. So I'm going to put my password, and of course, using SSH keys is more secure than using your password in PuTTY as well, or in any SSH client. So I just need one droplet. So I'm going to select my whole project, and my setup is ready, and I'm going to click on create the droplet. So it's going to create the droplet. It's going to take a while, not that much. It'll be ready. And just wait for a minute. There we go. It's starting to move. And that's all. So we're going to click on the details. And I'm going to change the host name. I'm going to keep it as server1.k-tuts.com. There we go. The droplet has been renamed. It also serves as the pointer record to my host. So now I'm going to copy the IP version 4 address. I'm going to open putty. And I'm going to start a new session. There we go. You see there's that warning which states that the server host key is not cached in the registry. So it's just an alarm that it might not be the same server that you've been accessing previously. But because we have not accessed this server previously, we're pretty sure that it's the same server. So we're going to accept the risk of moving forward. We are going to log in as root. And we're going to enter the password. There we go. We're ready. So we're going to move to the temp directory. So we are in the temp directory now, and I'm going to copy this command from the Virtualmin website onto my putty interface. I'm going to just right click after copying the command from the other website. I'm going to hit enter. Whoops. wget was not found. So it's okay. So I'm going to install Perl, by the way, just in case. It's good for you to see as well as how many things can actually go wrong when you don't expect them to go wrong. So I just realized that if I'm not having wget, maybe I'm not having Perl as well. Of course, I would not be having Perl here. So I'm going to install wget as well. There we go. And I'm going to try to fetch the URL. There we go. It looks good. And from here, I'm going to do sh install.sh. And I'm going to move forward. It tells me that my host name is not fully configured. I'm going to keep that as server.1-k-tuts.com. Serves as the pointer record, and it updates in the control panel as well. And the process starts. So it's going to take a few minutes, around 3 to 5 minutes, to install all the dependencies. So it's going to install LampStack, which includes Apache, Maestro, PHP, PHP 7. It's going to install mail server, postfix, firewalls, DevCut. So a bunch of old things, bind DNS server. So a bunch of old things will be like installed here, and it will provide you a very, very seamless experience of managing your server. Of course, only if you know what you're doing. And while this installs, I'll be right back with you. I'll have to pause the video here. So I thought like I should resume back while the process is still running, and it will show you all the time it takes, or most of the time it takes while installing dependencies and system packages. It's going to go on from here, and once it's finished with installing dependencies and a few system packages at the back end, it's going to install postfix. It's then going to install. It's then going to install Dovecot, bind DNS server, firewall, and a bunch of the remaining stuff. And then there will be no such things as errors, hopefully, and we will be ready to use the control panel. And the good thing and the beauty of this control panel is that it's the setup and the installation is almost automated. You don't have to worry about performing various steps during the installation. It takes its time and it completes the whole process without any manual intervention, which is also a big benefit for people who are just starting into the world of server management. But it really gives you an easy way to professionally manage your VPS machines. And not only that, you can manage one VPS machine through that, you can manage multiple VPS machines through one control panels. You can create clusters, you can create multiple databases, multiple virtual hosts, you can create multiple virtual servers. So you can use one VPS machine to create multiple websites through using the same control panel or using the same virtual private server. So it's a big benefit and certainly recommended. So it's not the recommended choice that you go with installing one WordPress website on one VPS. Rather, you have options, and when you have options to save cost, you should opt for setting up one VPS, a decent one in size. You notice that here I did not choose a VPS which was of very small size, only because of the reason that number one, control panel actually takes the memory. So it consumes memory, so 1 GB is not enough, and you have to have at least 2 GB of RAM and memory to run for the control panel. And once the control panel actually installs, we are going to walk through the steps of installations. And this is the post-installation configuration that we call it once the Virtualmin gets ready. And here you can see that it's being installed still. It's taking its time. So we are going to pause for a little bit more time so that the video does not get long, and I'll get back to you again. All right, welcome back, everybody. So here you can see that the installer actually moved to phase 3 of 3, which now is a configuration part. So it's now configuring AWS stats, Apache, Bind, Clam, antivirus, Dovecot, firewall. So it's setting up all the stuff accordingly, which is a great utility and very decent stuff. So once all the configuration is complete, so it's going to give you a message, which we are going to get hopefully as well, the success message that the server has been installed, and we are ready to access the control panel through a given link, which in that case is going to be my host name that I posted. But of course, I cannot access my host name right now. So what I'll need to do is that I will need to put in the IP address. So here you see that all the AWS stats, Apache, Bind, Clam, Dovecot, MySQL, NTP, Net, ProFTPD, sorry, that's the FTP server is being set up, and the configuring quotas. It's also plotting the quotas and spam assassin and configuring upgrades, usermin, webmin, and webalizer. So webmin is the core of the control panel, on top of which sits the control panel virtual servers. So you do most of the things in the webmin. However, you control the state of the virtual servers that you have through the Virtualmin. That's why we call it Virtualmin. It's officially called Virtualmin as well. So installation is complete. We have received a success message, and it states that if there were no errors above, Virtualmin should be ready. And as I stated, it should be ready at the server host name that I posted. But of course, it's not going to be ready at this point. We are going to access it through the IP address that we have here. So I'm going to copy it from here, and I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to, oops, I'm sorry. I have to post the port name, the port address. Wow. So you get that SSL warning because you've not set up your SSL yet. The certificates are not signed. And we should be ready in a few moments. There we go. The server is ready. So we are going to access the server through our root credentials. And there we go. It should sign in, provided that I did not provide that password, which I did not. Okay. Here it is. So a brand new look to our control panel. And you can see the installation is finished. However, we have these post-installation steps that we have to perform, or we should perform. So the post-installation visit allows us to configure Virtualmin optimally for the system. We are going to continue. It states that, do I want to preload Virtualmin libraries? I would just keep it as is. It states that I want to run email domain lookup server. I would say no for now, because I just have 2 gigs of memory. We'll move on to the next step. It states that the system is going to host domains that will receive a large amount of email scanning incoming messages for viruses can generate high CPU load. So I'm going to enable virus scanning anyway. It takes about 750 MB of RAM. So I have enough memory. So I'm going to go with that. Okay, so some weird thing happened. All right, so I'm going to keep it as on demand. I'm going to move forward. It wants me to confirm if I want to run the spam assassin server filter. I'd say yes. Oops, yes. All right, so it wants me to confirm if I want to use a MySQL database or if I want to use a PostgreSQL database. I'm going to go with MySQL because most of the stuff that I do is on MySQL, and of course, I'm a MySQL fan because I work with PHP. And PHP and MySQL have that relationship that goes far back. So I'm going to remove the MySQL password. I'm going to remove the test MySQL database. Also, I'm going to remove any anonymous MySQL access. I'm going to move forward in the next step. You will see why I did that. Oops, gave me an error. For some reason, I'm going to keep that as my name. And let's see what happens. Right, so it gave me access tonight, which rightfully should be. And I think it should work fine like this. Right, that's the thing it should have shown me at the first place. I'm not sure why it just throw that error. So I'm going to set my own MySQL password, which is going to be my name. And I'm going to override the root MySQL password to match. And we're going to wait for a few seconds so the operation can be completed. And it should be ready in a while. There we go. So I'm going to keep it as a medium system. I expect that I'm going to access MySQL database most of the times. So I'm going to proceed through stepping and clicking on the next button. All right, I'm going to skip the checking of resolvability for the primary name server. I don't know. I know my name servers have not been set up right now, so that's not a problem for me for now. So I'm going to move forward. See that these are some steps, some essential steps that you have to perform. And then it asks me if I want to store the passwords in a plain text file or I want to store the hash passwords. From the security perspective, I would never want to use them in a plain file. I will only want to use the hash passwords, store them in a hash password way. So I'm going to do that. So now it wants me to verify if I want to set up a default virtual server. I will say no. It wants me to confirm if I want to enable SSL on the default server. I will say no, and I will proceed. All right, it says that Virtualmin post installation configuration is now complete. Awesome. Great. I'm going to confirm and move on to next. And then I'm going to check and refresh the configuration. So it tells me that my system has 1.79 gigs of memory, which is at or above the Virtualmin recommended minimum of 256 MB. Awesome. So my DNS server is installed. System is already configured to use it. This is installed. Apache is installed. PHP version is 5.4.16, and I also have 7.2 here and 5.4. I can use whatever I need for these virtual servers that I'm going to set up next time. I'm going to continue. So these checks are going to take a while before they finish. We will wait for the setups, these checks to finish before we can actually create a virtual server. Or I can show you one more step, which is required to access your virtual server through a memorable hostname. So you cannot access your VPS through IP addresses all the time, and perhaps it's not the production way of doing things, and also not a very best way of doing things. So just in a moment, we will use a domain registrar to enter an A record to point to the IP address that we have here. So it says that my system must be rebooted to enable XFS quotas on the root file system. I'm not going to reboot it now, but anyway. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to log on to Namecheap. Oops. Oh, excuse me. And I'm going to sign in. Oops. I'm going to go to the control panel and access k-tuts.com. This is k-tuts.com. On Namecheap, I'm going to click on Manage the domain. I'm going to move to Advanced DNS, and all right, so I'm going to add an A record, which I will keep it as server 1, and it is going to point to this address here. Oops, I'm sorry, it picked up HTTPS. Copy, paste. That's all that's required for now. So I'm going to go to the return to the virtual server list that I have. All right, so our server is ready. So for instance, now, if I want to, let's say, set up a subdomain or maybe an email server, what I would do is that I would really just add a virtual server here, and I would set up the details accordingly. And let me show you the basic form that shows up. So It asks me for the domain name, a little description, which should be user-friendly and allows me to remember what I did that for, what I created that virtual server for, administration password, then advanced options, which I will not touch, enable features. I definitely want to set up the DNS number whenever I set up the domain name. I'd want my website, virus filtering, AWS stats, and so on and so forth, the database and the spam filtering and everything. So I'm not going to create a virtual server now because it's out of scope of this this video. I'm definitely going to come back with in the future with more videos as how to install the SSL on this machine that we just created and how to install or how to set up a domain. But before we could actually go and complete the video, I'd want to show you if we would really be able to access this virtual server through the domain A record that we just updated. So remember I posted the A record as server1.k-tuts.com, and I'm sorry, it's SSL enabled, so we will click here. There we go. So it's still giving us the SSL warning. We will worry about that later, but there you go. Your server and your control panel is available at server1.k-tuts.com dash, I'm sorry, so server1.k-tuts.com at 10,000 port, and you will access that using the same credentials that you have already and the ones that you punched during accessing that server through the IP address.